work to get the lyrics and to package them and produce them, but we really need to do more of that.
Good evening.
Evening.
I'm really inspired by your talk
Thank
this
you.
evening. My name is Chris Justin. I'm a lecturer here at the College of the Bahamas in music.
Excellent.
So this was particularly interesting to me. I also like to say that I'm the other nigger. In many ways, I was thinking about when I went to school in America.
Mm-hmm.
My parents are of Haitian descent.
Mm-hmm.
I'm of Haitian descent. My parents from Haiti. I was born in the Bahamas. When I went to America to go to school, I was like the other nigger because the white people treated me better than the black Americans because I wasn't a black American.
Divide and rule.
But here in the Bahamas, we have the same problem because I'm of Haitian descent. I'm still the other nigger, you know. But I find it interesting. One thing I'd like to point out: the power of music, and how the musicians and the writers are in many ways muzzled from saying what they want to say, and that's a real problem in our society. We write songs that we intend to change what's going on in our communities, but the radio stations wouldn't play them because they're not shake your bongi or eat all the meat or you're drunk again or that kind of thing.
That's the same point that Lara makes. At the,
Definitely.
You know?
And it's a real challenge trying to be a musician that want to create change in a society. I just want to know what you observed in your moving around and what would you recommend we do here in our small community to make those changes. For example, I'm going to give you as a gift some music that I composed a few years ago. And on this, I really poured my heart into it because there's a song on this that says, I was a king in distant land. They bound my feet and chained my mind. Now I'm so far away and I'm a part of this insanity. But you'll never hear this on the radio in the Bahamas, you know. But it's out, you know. And there's another when Father Thompson was murdered in his church. That same morning I woke up and I wrote a song that everybody's here for something. And it spoke to the young man who did it. You pull a gun, you shoot me, and you're really destroying yourself. They'll never play that on the radio. And this has been on for years. But this is just a small example of what other composers in our society that they're going through. People who are writing, people who are trying to make a difference. And it's a real, real challenge. I hope that
I think you see that we, the general public, you know, that generic category, we have a responsibility to the artists. So if we don't buy the CDs and the books, we can't expect the people who are running the radio stations to make money to, you know, to promote the work. We have to call the station and say, why are you not playing this? In other words, the radio stations respond to who they think the market is. And if you tell them, I'm not listening to you unless you play X, they will respond. But sometimes we're very passive and we assume that, oh, you know, the powers that be, they've set up the marketing money that they're getting from advertisers is directly related to who is listening. And if people are not listening, they're not going to make money.
Well, I think that's where the general public definitely plays a role, but I know there's been serious consequences of artists making the noise. I have a friend who also is a composer. He went out and protest and talk about the radio stations and say, well, you got to play more Bahamian music, you got to play this. Well, they just said, okay, we'll teach you a lesson. We won't play none of your music.
But, you know, in Jamaica, for years, thank you, big respects, and I'll certainly enjoy listening to this. For years, Peter Tosh, he used to complain about how they wouldn't play reggae in Jamaica. And he said, you know, sometimes when they play one reggae, it's like they feel sorry for you. And they play, you know. And we end up having an all reggae radio station, RFM. It's just like, you just take a Chinese Jamaican owns the station, incidentally. And it's, you know, you just need one person to make that leap now. IRFM is the most popular station in Jamaica. They get the most advertising, the most popular station. The Radio Jamaica, which was the first station, has lost it. You know, and they have wonderful ads where they use the names of all of the radio stations and to say, you know, just mocking them and to say, if you're not IRA, you're not saying anything. And so it just requires one person to have the vision to say, this music is really at the core of the culture. We're going to run with it. So in time, you're going to be on the radio in Bahamas, but maybe you'll have to get the money to come up with your own station. I mean, and this is where we need to challenge ourselves to ownership. Muta Baruka, the dub poet, he has a wonderful line where he says, everybody at the university, he knows want to do management studies. He doesn't hear anybody wanting to do owner studies. So we just have to get people together, get the money, and say, we're going to run our own station. That's what has to happen.
Hi, Dr. Cooper. I really want to commend you for so eloquently for your bravery at so eloquently covering a subject as murky as race. It's so difficult to try to talk about the possibility of racial connections, especially in light of the anti-essentialist debate. And the way that you managed to talk about race and actually promote the idea of a racial identity, a shared racial identity, as a consciousness rather than as some sort of biological trait is interesting, even though there is this still a connection to a kind of biological as well as historical connection. And I just wondered if you could speak more about the idea of race as a consciousness rather than as, you know,
biology. Yeah, well, you see, the notion of race has become totally discredited in postmodernist theory. But you have to ask yourself, who are the people who have come up with these theories? And they themselves are raced and placed, but they don't see themselves as being raced and placed, and they're assuming that the values that they're articulating are universal. And they're not, they're peculiar to them. Because it's one of the things that we talk about is it's just when black people reach political independence and we start to claim power that all of a sudden notions of race are delegitimized, you know, but other people have the power and they're still clearly raced, but they don't think of themselves in those terms. I was at this conference and a British scholar, very well known, talking about black people, non-white peoples, and I hate that non-white concept, people of color. So I told, in the response, question and answer period, I just say, well, you know, white people are marked by color as well. You know, when you talk about people of color, then you suggest that white is not a color and that white people are normal and normative and the rest of us are colored, you know. It's just people of color is just another version of colored people, you know, but it sounds very hip. So basically what I think is that there are people with a political interest in saying that race doesn't matter. But these are the same people that enjoy the privilege of race. So, you know, so we just have to call them out and say, that's a political theory that you're using to stop other people from now consolidating around race by saying, oh, that is just essentialist, race and nation and these things, they don't matter. But where are the powerful people and in what nations do they reside? And so it's just a racket. And you have to be able to see through it. Yeah. So when poor Marjorie's invited me to give this lecture, I said, well, if Marjorie knows what she's getting herself into, she's very brave. But I believe in challenging some of these uncomfortable kinds of truths and just asking us to look at it differently. So don't let the postmodernist theory confuse you. You have to be able to say, yes, I know why you guys are saying that, but let's look